Which
All
way? That
right.
way. That's the right way.
There we are. It's 4th of July. We're here now for a special 4th of July energy update. I'm here with Lotus, who is a master at astrology, and she's here with me, a master of energy clearing manipulation and mental manipulation and so forth. And so we have an update for you guys, as well as some insight and some discussion and conversation that I think you all will enjoy and benefit from. So, welcome. How you doing today, Lotus?
Oh, I'm doing great,
Doing
Michael.
great.
Yeah,
You guys
doing
just had a
great.
parade in your town.
We did
Yep.
every year, as long as I can remember. It starts at 6 a.m. and the fire department sends out a big siren that wakes the whole town up for their pancake breakfast. And then huge whole
Freedom
town turn up.
pancakes.
Pancakes, freedom and pancakes. That's right.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, you shared with me some very interesting things recently and how you dialed in with your True to the Stars astrology system. How there are 4 specific alignments that are common with today and exactly what was happening in 1776, which is
that's right,
interesting.
Michael.
And
It
so,
is.
how often do alignments like this happen?
I'd say once in a blue moon, we might get something of this level of repetition. It kind of blew my mind as I was getting ready to talk with you and looking at the similarity between the two charts that there is so much shared.
Hmm. Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, what is the benefit of knowing this?
Right. I think that one of the benefits is that we are currently in such a time of change. And so many people are facing uncertainty and wondering energetically what's happening,
Yeah.
right? And so knowing the energetics of the planetary alignments and knowing that they're similar to the time of 1776, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, when there was such a huge shift in the governmental structures. This can be helpful in knowing that we are changing as
Yeah.
a society, that things are shifting.
Yeah.
And by knowing the astrology, it gives us a greater sense of, okay, I wasn't imagining things. There is an energy present, there is a repeating pattern. And what is that pattern? And that's one reason I dive into astrology is to discern that more deeply, to give you more information.
Yeah. We see it very helpful in people's lives when they decipher their own astrology code,
Star chart.
their star chart. And I think there's 2 sides to this because there's deciphering the pattern of knowing what may happen and what's likely to happen.
Yeah.
But then I also believe that no matter what happens, we should also be at cause with ourselves and not be at effect with things that do happen. So I think there's a balance as far as like being aware if it's going to rain and having your umbrella, but at the same
Right.
time not having a panic attack if it's going to rain and sleet or hail or snow,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
like being aware and being okay and being capable and functional no matter what happens. And when political things get stirred up, people get freaking crazy sometimes.
They do.
And
They do. Yeah.
so there's a couple things that Lotus and I have been discussing recently that we thought would be so helpful for you guys, as far as awareness of what's going on and this emotional thing that happens with people when there's politics going on. And some of you may have known I did an hour-long special on Alex Jones as I broke down some mind control things as a previous professional stage hypnotist. And we were discussing more of how that occurs. Like, how do people get so triggered and programmed and recently we had a discussion, and I was able to may have it make sense easier than
Yeah,
I've ever explained before. Um, and so we have two very different topics at hand that I think kind of intertwine in some kind of way.
they sure do. They
Yeah.
sure do. Hmm.
So if you stay tuned and listen, you're going to get a clearer update on the chart, and I'm going to
Hmm.
give you some powerful things on understanding how we and other people get emotionally manipulated. I'm going to give you specific ways on how this is done, and I even have some news clips here that I'm going to show. I just typed in news in YouTube and just found like the recent news story, and they use it every single time. And I'm going to point out some of these things. And when I shared this with you the other day, and you were able to more deeply understand how people get manipulated, you then shared how much more compassion you had for the other person.
Right.
Can you share that experience?
Yeah, I found that, the last 4 years, there's been so much division between people to the point of family against family, and so much divisiveness in politics around people having such different point of views.
Right.
And you and I have been talking a lot about how do we heal this divide? How do we bring peace back to our families and our communities and help each other to have compassion and forgiveness for having different points of views? And how do we bring healing to this? And, we've been talking about it. And it was just the other day when we had that amazing conversation and you shared with me your point of view that I felt something open in my heart
Yeah.
space. And
Yeah,
I
it's
noticed.
not just a point of view. It is specifically how people are programmed emotionally.
Exactly.
This is the science of emotions and how to implant suggestions into people via their traumas. And
And how
so
that's happening.
and how how it continues to happen, and how the news
Mhm.
uses this all the time, and why. And notice when people are debate and when they disagree with one another, they're highly emotional.
Mhm.
Anyhow, I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But what was your experience after you heard what I said and then you kind of applied this, right?
Yeah. Well, I went out to the 4th of July parade today and, got my American flag. And, there's all types of people. There's all types of people when you go out into the world. And I found myself next to someone who I could tell was just very different from me, maybe in my point of view, my perspective. Um, and it was the first time where I kind of, instead of having like a reaction, and should I share what caused me to have that
That's
reaction?
up to you. Yeah.
So the woman was wearing a mask, right? And
Mm,
that's personal choice for people
right.
if they feel they need that. Um, but I felt myself, contract a little bit just seeing it and feeling like, oh, I wish she didn't have to feel like she had to wear that. I felt a lot of different thoughts come up. And in the past, I think I might have felt myself just shut down to her as a person and
Right.
just kind of distance myself. Just like she might have felt the same way about me not having
Right.
that
Exactly. This can
on.
go both ways, right? Whatever
Right.
political side you're on, or your preferences, or whatever this is, we're not picking any sides here.
No,
This is really for both sides.
it is. It is. And it,
Honestly,
it was
yeah.
like a split second moment. It was loud. But in those split second moments, sometimes you can just notice you had a totally different reaction to something. Like you chose in that moment to change it and it shifted.
Hmm.
And it was in that moment that I had this sense of she's just like me and she's just received different information and she's just doing her best. And I just felt compassion and love. We're just two people standing here in this amazing moment, this parade. And I don't need to allow this to dictate how I feel.
Hmm.
And
Right.
I felt liberated. I felt I felt like, wow, what would it be like for the whole world to feel free of judgment towards one another? Just to allow, to accept, as long as we're not hurting one another,
Yeah.
right? To
And,
just be there.
right. And so the big understanding you got was simply this fact that I'm going to share here today. And for all of you watching, listening,
Mhm.
this really could be a game changer as far as how you know your emotions and how you know yourself and how you know other people and how behaviors are created, right? This is a big key element to this. I'm going to do my best to share this without any visuals, but this is how it's done, okay? And if any of you have been following me and you have worked with me or you've been on our workshops, we create ridiculous results very fast, very reliably, as far as getting rid of people's lifelong fears, getting rid of physical things, anxieties, basically any type of emotional thing. We're able to clear it very quickly and easily through our methods. And through and when you know how to do this stuff, then you can understand psychology and behavior very clearly. And so we're going to give this to you today. And so when notice how people are emotional when they talk about their politics and their sides, right? It's usually very emotional, right? And there's a lot of you who are very analytical, and you've thought about it and you came to conclusions through your thinking, and that's fantastic, right? And that's really, I mean, I think we should all be able to have conversations where we can just share our points of view with no emotional triggers. But when people have the emotional triggers, it's not just about the one thing that they're concerned about with wearing mask, right? It's usually relates to what's been implanted from the news and the media via stimulating triggers that have to do with death,
Mm.
right? And so, if you don't wear the mask, you're going to kill somebody. You're going to kill everybody, right? As an example, and why this is significant is because the fear of death isn't just like you being afraid of losing your family, which is huge, but it actually goes back. We know this scientifically. It goes back into your DNA. All fears and traumas that don't get resolved get passed on through the DNA through generations and generations and generations and generations, right? And so the energy of the same stimulus, death, gets retriggered. And we know this every time that a trauma gets retriggered. It's kind of like this encapsulated energy with all the memories that are associated with it. And when a trauma gets triggered, it's almost like it opens up and it gives you all that same energy and feelings you had before, right? There's energy stoppages, and it also has this remindedness about it because your subconscious mind is trying to protect you from a similar event that's counteracting your survival or giving you pain, right? So it's reminding you to stay away, to fight or flight, right? Or freeze, maybe. And so anytime that encapsulation opens and is stimulated, like the news gets you, and I have these news clips, and I just typed in news, and it's just like death, destruction, hurricane.
It was,
It's always death, and I almost don't even want to share the example because it's just so negative, and it's just like
it's
I don't
really
even want
bad.
to just put it on. But you've seen it, and I just watched the one today, and it's just like it's just they just
I
want to
think you
trigger.
should.
They you think we should? Okay,
It's so bad.
yeah,
When you played it for me, I just cringed. I was like, because I try my best to not watch the news because of what
right,
you're sharing.
yeah,
But I feel like in order to fully grasp the intensity of what is happening with
yeah.
the news and the implantation of the use of emotion.
Right, because when you become aware of it, it doesn't affect you as when you're watching it and it is affecting you and you're getting manipulated.
Right. I felt it.
the
Yeah.
awareness changes it. However, it still can affect you. But if you're aware, it's like a magic trick. And if you know how the magic tricks work, then it's not going to trick you, right? But if
Right.
you know the emotional manipulation going on, then you can stop it. And I've shared this before in my videos as well, literally with a magic trick, right? And so I just picked the most recent broadcast that was online. So this is an ABC News from July 3rd, yesterday, and watch how they open this.
Keeping an open mind about the future of his campaign. Hurricane Beryl slams Jamaica as a deadly Category 4 and now on a path that could reach Texas. First, all eyes on President Biden. Sources tell ABC News the president has privately acknowledged the next few days.
And notice the open mind. They're using that open mind, right? They are literally trying to open your mind.
Will be critical in his campaign, meeting with top Democrats, including the vice president, and tonight with some of the nation's Democratic governors. The White House insists Biden is staying in the race. Selena Wang with late reporting. Our other major headline, Hurricane Beryl slams Jamaica. The already
Another
deadly
deadly
storm
thing. I'm going to fast forward.
This weekend. Fires threaten communities in the west.
Stimulating
More than
death
1,400
again.
Firefighters battling the hurricanes in 22 states on the move. News of a Delta flight forced to divert to JFK.
So it's just continual. You know, I haven't watched the news recently, but this is how it is, and this is what most people are just like is on the top of your news feeds, and they're just feeding this constantly, right? And what this does is it re-stimulates past traumatic events with death, and this transcends in your DNA. And for some of you, you won't believe it, but this is really the case. Is it also transcends into your past lives? How many lives have you lived? Goodness, I'm not even going to say the answer, but it's a lot. Right? How many generations of DNA goes back in your family? How many hundreds, right? And so every time this gets re-stimulated, it adds more energy and encapsulates more emotion because you have had more life force feeding it and it becomes encapsulated. And so it actually gets worse and or more powerful and stronger over time. Think about a child who is free. There's not much fear going on with a child, right? They're dancing and singing and playing and saying whatever. But over time, they become more inhibited as they go to school and they get made fun of and they get punished and all these things. And then look at a person, the typical elder person who's like scared to do everything. I'm not going to say every elder person, but a lot of them are just totally frozen in their lives and they don't do much. Right? And so you go from one end of the spectrum to the other. And so if someone's not dealing with things, you know, and confronting or what have you, then over time, that's what happens. And so they're re-stimulating, right? With all this death stuff, right? Worry about the food, right? You're going to die with what you're eating. All these things, right? They open up the trauma. And so every time they add in a piece of information that equals that trauma, it then re-stimulates with the new information. And so anti-masker equals death. And you'll try to have a conversation with them, right? Or they'll try to have a conversation with the other person. And even though there's no analytical information going back and forth that makes sense, you just have people who are just so emotional they can't even comprehend, and it just transcends what they can even understand. And
because the trigger is so deep.
the trigger is incredibly deep. And here is the magical piece to this, though. How do you get people out of that hypnotic state? Right? As a hypnotist who used to hypnotize people a lot and understands it well,
Yeah.
right? How do you get them out of hypnosis? It's not with more hypnosis. It's not with more information. Information can break the trance, right? It can, and it does. But it's highly unlikely. It's like trying to tell the guy up on stage, hey, don't get hypnotized by the hypnotist when he says sleep. Sleep drops down, right? Don't get triggered when you see the anti-masker or the Biden person or the Republican or whatever you want to call, right? I'm not saying to pick any sides, right? But that's how it is. But how do you dehypnotize? And this is something I don't really even see, except for maybe one of my mentors.
Right.
It's if you had the person clear that trauma with death, that the news is stimulating, that is keying you in and getting you fearful and activating this fight or flight and activating the adrenaline and having you stay attention to the news because it's so important. If you were to clear what that trigger is, you would clear the information stuck to it.
Wow.
And then the person can actually think about wearing the mask or the political opponent or politics in general or whatever it is. Then there can actually be a conversation. And this goes for both sides again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that right there is the big dehypnotic secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as like doing work now, because I still work with people one-on-one and in groups, I don't do the hypnosis anymore because it's not about putting more suggestions into you for you to have freedom and be more powerful and to get the results you want. It's about getting the blocks out that have been stimulated over lifetimes and generations that gets re-stimulated, that makes it so hard for us to just flow in life without any difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
And as life goes on, and you face more circumstances, situations, and different types of people, those stimulate the blocks in your DNA more and more as you have more experiences. And depending upon how you respond to it will depend on if it grows bigger or if you start to deplete and change the programming in your DNA or the soul's imprint.
Mm. Wow.
That's the big secret they don't want you to know. How to actually dehypnotize is to clear the blocks with the traumas, because all the programming is latched onto the encapsulated trauma that they stimulate through the news like we just saw. Because after this opening, then they go into all their opinions and they can lie and put implants in there as long as it looks believable while you're emotional. You accept it all. That is the barrier going into the subconscious. And it's not just the subconscious, it's the reactive subconscious. So it's one thing to have something in your subconscious that you can recall and remember sometime. But it's a whole other thing to have it in the reactive part of the mind, which is attached to a trauma.
Right.
That's having you fight or flight to get away or move towards something.
Yeah. I thought it was so interesting, Michael, how they're talking about the presidential candidate and then immediately into hurricane, death, trauma, open mind. And I felt like so many different things were slamming my consciousness at once.
Yeah.
Emotional.
Oh, yeah.
Suggestive with words, and then tying them together almost. And it was like it became difficult to know what I felt about either one of those things.
Yeah. High alert, law enforcement, tourists killed. I mean, this is all, those are all the stories. I mean, that's literally what they're feeding. Right? And that's the opening. The first 2 minutes is just death, destruction, kill, law enforcement, the food is tainted, right? Everyone is so on edge. The traumas have been stimulated. The encapsulated energy is now open. You're adding more information into it as you're afraid and concerned and worried. And then all the information they're putting in there, attached to the political movement makes everybody then triggered with those emotions. And notice what it's like. It's like, you're going to kill everybody. The other opponent is a racist and he's killing everyone, right? It's usually related to death, and that's the most powerful thing with your family that you love.
Right. I can feel my adrenaline just from watching 2 seconds of those news clips. Like my adrenaline just started going through the roof.
Right. Yep, the music, the colors, everything.
Emotion. I mean, it's so engaging. It's like going to the movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it's like, so what's the solution? It's being able to clear those traumas. If you don't have those traumas and you've cleared those traumas, then it's not going to do anything to you. And you watch it and you can analyze it and make decisions based on information rather than being emotional. And so yeah, go
would
ahead.
you, sorry to interrupt. Would you say that if someone is watching these news broadcasts and they have an emotional reaction, I mean, it's obviously very emotionally stimulating.
Yeah.
So if you do have an emotional response, does that emotional response mean that it's triggering an encapsulated trauma?
Yeah, one or many, or because the way it usually works is, the way it does work is, you have a line of traumas going back. And so for example, when we clear someone of a traumatic event because they have anxiety or they have panic attacks or they can't do something like speak on stage or whatever it might be, right? Some kind of fear that they have that stops them to getting in a relationship or having money or doing a business or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
You follow the time track back and you can clear the earliest one in this lifetime or further back, and whether it's real or imagined, it still works. We've proven this with hypnotherapy, with both sides of professionals that believe in past lives and don't believe in past lives. Whether it's real or imagined, it works. So if it comes up in your mind and you think, okay, it was 1500s, dressed as, someone in Europe, and something bad happened, and you clear that, it works either way. So when you get back to an early version, when you clear that one event, it clears the whole line from that point forward.
Wow.
And so as equally, when you stimulate it and add more information in today, that's why it's so powerful, because it transcends so much time. And there's so much energy into it, right? And I was going through clips today of people getting triggered, and it became very political because you're picking sides of, one side that's very emotional and another side that's not so much emotional. But I mean, just think about people in politics that get triggered. There's so much energy there because it's tied to things that go back so far.
So Michael, how would you, as a hypnotist and as a master energy healer, how would you define, I know a lot of people probably know what triggering means,
Yeah.
but how would you define triggering? What exactly is triggering? Like, what is that?
Right. This is a good question, because even the very fundamental questions that you're asking that most people think they know, I mean, do you really understand it? Because I could explain it in a way like, and it can give you an aha moment. You've heard it before, you've learned it, but you haven't really heard it, because right now I can give you new information, give you an aha. So if you have an open mind,
I'm sure we'd love to hear it.
yeah. So a trigger is a stimulus in the, so say you had a traumatic event happened where you fell off a cliff. Okay? You bumped your head and you knocked out, right?
Mm.
Okay? In that moment, you had pain and unconsciousness. And this is really where a lot of these begin, is pain and unconsciousness, right? This also goes for when you get knocked out in the operation room and things.
Oh gosh.
Which is why you got to really be careful with that.
Right.
So say you fell off the cliff, right? And so you fell down You hit your head on the rocks there. So everything associated with that event goes into that reactiveness, and rocks, the cliff, the environment, the area where you're in, all equals pain and unconsciousness. And so when you come back out of it, you're very likely to be incredibly cautious in that same area and any type of area that looks similar to it.
Right.
And this is a miraculous, brilliant system that our bodies are designed for, right? To keep ourselves away from any kind of situation that's going to harm us. Okay.
Right.
So in that context, it's very helpful because you're likely to never be around or stay close to an edge like that ever again because you had so much pain and it threatened your survival so much. Okay. So a trigger in that situation would be getting close to the edge. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? And so what can happen is, say we forced you close to the edge and your reactive mind's going, no, stay away, no. And we're pushing you closer and closer. No. I mean, the news is doing this too. They're shoving death in your face and re-stimulating you, right? And so if we're pushing you closer and closer to the edge and you're getting very stimulated, you're going into fear, right? And then we have you, and then the person doing it to you, right? All of a sudden now that person is becoming a trigger to those feelings. And what's the likelihood of you liking them from that point forward? Wow. You're always going to have this tainted idea of them doing this mean thing when to them it looks ridiculous because you're like 10 feet away from the edge. Like, right. But they're trying to bring you to look at the sunset or something. Right? And so on their side, it looks ridiculous and irrational, but on your side, you fell off the cliff once and you're not going anywhere near it.
Right? And in that moment, everything that happened when you fell off the cliff and the pain and the sensation are just flashing in front of you.
Unconsciously.
Right. As they're like, "Hey, come check out this sunset." Right. And you're wondering like, why.
Right.
You don't want to.
Yeah. And this is why there are some people that have a crazy fear of heights or driving over bridges or water or something, and they've never had anything happen in their lives before. It's because in a past life, something similar like this happened, right? And so that's one way to kind of help people understand traumas from past lives. Or it could be in the DNA because your parents may have had something similar, and so that's getting fired off.
Michael, I really appreciate you bringing up this idea of past lives. And as a energy healer and reading astrology charts, I fully have seen it in effect a crazy amount of times. I know there's a lot of people out there who may be on the fence one way or the other about past lives. And I know you've actually given some really amazing anecdotal stories or information about past lives and why you have continued to relate to this idea. Would you be open to sharing some of that just for people at home in case to help them?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't believe in past lives and it's hard for you to believe, I respect that, I respect that. I mean, I know professionals that are very good that don't believe in past lives, but they're effective. I think it's a little bit limiting. I mean, because there's many stories of children talking to their parents and saying, "Mommy, I used to fly this plane in the war." Like, what do you mean? And my name was this, and I lived here. And they go check it, and it's spot on to what the kid said. There's a lot of cases of that. I first got exposed to this doing past life regressions and learning about that whole thing. Brian Weiss has some good books on it of many stories of people remembering their past lives, and then you go back and verify them. And I know other people in different modalities that have done the same, where they become aware of their past lives, and then they'll go to those locations. And I know of one person specifically that actually met a person that knew his previous life, and they had this crazy conversation. And so, whether you believe it or not, I mean, we respect that. But I know most people are open to this idea, and a lot of people are like, "Please give me a past life. I want to do that." Well,
Right. Yeah.
and a lot of times, I mean, I did a session today with somebody without doing regression work, just clearing on specific items. Their past lives just become conscious, and that's really the way to do it. You can do past lives and have an interesting experience and things, but you can do this without any kind of trance work, because if you clear yourself, you just get access to it. Just like you can remember yesterday or 10 years ago, you can have access to those memories too, very easily, if you clear it. And, we have a lot of blocks and a lot of reasons why we don't remember these things right now, and they can be cleared and addressed with. But it's an interesting topic. And when you do astrology, it's interesting because when we look at the astrology charts, like if someone has a chart, and where did I put the chart on the screen here? Like if someone has their chart and then you read the chart for them, for some reason it's not popping up. Anyhow, I thought I had that ready to go right there for you, but
It's such a catchy.
hey,
It's so catchy.
but when someone has their chart, you basically have the imprint of their soul, which is the result of all their many past lives up until that point. And so when you're born, the planets are at a perfect vibrational match as to who you are.
Right.
Which is why we have our parents and our family and the DNA, which is also a perfect match to who we are and who we've been in that moment of birth, which can be really revealing as to what can be addressed and what your challenges are in this life, and maybe your mission and so forth. But
oh yeah, it's always mind-blowing. Even as soon as I sit down with someone and their chart, something happens, like a shift in the energy of the room, and the healing work becomes stronger, because it's like their whole soul, their star destiny, it's just right there.
Yeah. Oh, we have one person. We have a couple of people commenting in the chat.
Oh, cool.
Callum Wilkinson has been sharing a couple of, and he says, a trigger is the same as an anchor in NLP, a hook in sales marketing. Yeah, very similar, right. Because, in NLP, you are creating the emotion, stimulating the emotion, and then the person will maybe put their hands like this is a common one that they'll do. Or they'll touch them on the shoulder with that high emotion to then associate that emotion with the trigger. Right. So very similar. And what's very interesting is the more that you have cleared your encapsulated traumas, and when you get to a point where you barely have any, guess what? You're very unlikely to go into trances.
Oh.
Because you become more awakened and more aware, instead of being stuck in a trance, which most people are. They're encapsulated in thousands of these. They're stuck in many trances. And it's very difficult for most people to just be aware of normal things. So, yes, you can create anchors like that. And it can be helpful. And ideally, you can clear as many that come up, so you don't go into trances. You're just awareness. You are just consciousness without any inhibitions, which is really the goal. And why we encourage you guys to jump on our workshops when we do them, because we do very deep, intricate, very real clearings that is not really out there much.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a lot of practitioners and people who say they do clearings and things, but I'm often like the last resort because we finally clear the stuff. Absolutely. And it doesn't ever come back again.
Right.
So, some information we get to share and a little bit of plugging of what we do because we want you guys to get results.
Right. Michael, would you say then it's conceivable that someone could, if they were completely cleared of all their main triggers, past lives, ancestral, could watch the news filled
Yeah.
with so much emotion and intensity and no longer be emotionally triggered? Do you think that's possible?
Well, that's my experience. I mean, I watch this and laugh, you know. When I was watching this beforehand, you know, I'm just laughing. Because I can see everything they're doing, you know, and it doesn't affect me emotionally, right?
Hmm.
So yes, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's really the ultimate is you get to a point where you're just not triggered by anything,
Right.
you know, and there's a lot of work there to get to that place, you know,
Mhm.
but it's definitely possible, and it happens with people all the time when they work on it
Right.
and they have a way that actually works. So there's a lot of methods.
Right.
Find something that gets it 100% where you don't ever have the emotional stimulation again, and use that, you know, thousands of times
Mm-hmm.
to clear all the stuff you've probably never dealt with in many lifetimes. Callum is
Right.
Callum, I hope I was saying your name right. He says another comment, creating anchors is very helpful, I find. I created an anchor of every doorway. When I go through a door, I posture correct, I breathe better and smile as I created a trigger. Very nice. Yeah, you can use it to your advantage.
So I guess then what would be the definition of anchoring? So it sounds like that's an NLP word. Maybe not
It
everyone
is.
is familiar with anchoring. It's a different word than triggering.
It's
What is
very
anchoring?
similar. You know, a trigger is almost like, you know, the person gets triggered by something that they didn't consciously do. An anchor is more of like a planned thing that a hypnotist or an NLP practitioner or a person like Callum is doing to
Mhm.
himself to re-trigger re-trigger the anchor that was placed, right? It's like the boat that puts down the anchor in that location,
Mhm.
and then it's like you're going back to the same anchor in that same location, right? Um, and at that point, you know, you're creating a neural pathway, and then it's easy to access that same type of thought or feeling.
Is that similar? Is anchoring similar to, for instance, in a healing session, you do a clearing and you reprogram the mind to feel happy. And then you say, okay, now clasp your left wrist and think about being happy and create an anchor to the sensation of grasping the wrist and feeling happy. Is that the same phenomenon?
That would, yeah. So then when you would do that again, you're likely to be reminded of that same feeling,
You
right?
just create it automatically, like our friend in the chat, how he uses the archways to straighten his posture and breathe.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Remindedness.
Mhm.
Yeah, very good. Aileen, happy 4th. Thank
Yeah.
you for the comments. Yeah, it's a great topic, and it's great to be aware of these things, to get out of the trance, and then create your own.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So very cool. So I hope you guys learned a little bit there as far as mind control and how to feel better, how to be more
Hmm.
aware and awake and in control, right?
Hmm.
So very cool. Would
Shall we look at that chart and see some of those similarities?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull this chart up on the screen, but it only shows this news thing, and I'm not
Oh,
sure why it doesn't.
hmm.
Today's chart. Oh, there it is.
It's
Okay, so what do we got here, Lotus?
oh wow. Well, this is just kind of surreal. So here we have on the left side of the screen is today, 2024, 4th of July. And on the right is 1776, the 4th of July. And if you can see, the red circle represents Pluto. And Pluto was in Capricorn, 1776, at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And so that is the same. So we have one, two, three, four things, actually five things that are exactly the same in the chart, the astrological chart of the day, as it was in the year 1776, which is just kind of mind blowing. So,
So what? Yes.
Michael,
What does
as
this tell you?
yeah, so it tells me that we're in a similar energetic time frame as we were at the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We're in a similar energetic space of big change. So, let me just go ahead and break down real quick the four things here. So, so what we have is a planet that is Pluto, that is related to depth, intensity, transformation. It's known as the god of the underworld. Pluto is known as the god of Hades, and it relates to the unconscious. So you were just talking about death in the media, right? How they use the fear of death to promote people becoming emotionally triggered. And so we have the planet of death, Pluto, which really what it means is transformation, really
Right. From
death
from
or
one
rebirth.
life, one life to the other,
Right.
one thing to
It
the next. Yeah.
it basically marks initiation points. So it's the planet of initiation. It's the planet of going through a big transformation, just like being born or going through puberty or becoming an adult
Or a country becoming a country.
or a country
Right.
becoming a country.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it's in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn is business, it's structure, it's authority. It basically is the government. Capricorn could basically be the government. And so we have the planet of transformation and birth in the sign of government. What can that mean? Right? That can mean truth coming to light about the structures of our government. So, one thing Pluto can represent are what is below us, what is hidden, kind of like an iceberg. Pluto can represent what is underneath the surface, what we're not seeing. And so when Pluto is in Capricorn, the sign of government, it means that all the things that have been hidden and buried, just like at the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, right? The king was in control of the United States at that point. But what was he doing? Right? All the secrets that the king was engaged in, all the things that were not right for the people came up to the surface and created a huge transformation around how people felt about the government, right? They're like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And so Pluto and Capricorn right now, same as when it was, can be the great revelation of the secrets that have been buried in the government and the structures of control and the structures of power for however long that they've been there, which is a long time. So that's one thing.
Okay.
And that would be enough to go, wow, right? Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Michael?
I'm not really sure what to say, honestly.
Oh, okay.
I just think what does it mean? Well, well, there's a big shift when they signed the Declaration of Independence, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So
So what can
what?
that mean for us now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So what today are we going into something similar to that,
Right. Well,
right?
we have a huge election, right? And so what's interesting is there's a lot of truth coming to light about both of the candidates and about the government, and about everything involved in it, actually. There's a lot of hidden information and a lot of secrets that are slowly and inexorably being brought up to the
Right.
surface.
Yep.
And so seeing, that Pluto is in the same place it was as an astrologer, it would make sense to say that there could be a lot of truth that comes to light during this time of the election, similar to how a lot of truth came to light at the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Interesting.
Now,
Okay.
not only do we have that aspect, but we also have Chiron as in the same exact placement, the blue circle on the left and the blue circle on the
This
right.
one right
Same
here.
exact placement. Mm-hmm.
Same exact placement. Interesting.
1 degree,
By
1 degree
1 degree.
apart,
So pretty close.
really close.
Okay.
And
And
so,
Chiron is known as the wounded healer, right?
right.
And so, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I was
Just trying to
trying, how do I
remember
put this
all the
in
things you're
words?
teaching. Yeah.
You're doing such a great job. So the wounded healer in astrology, it in the collective, it means
And
what is our
by the way, why I have Lotus on here and talking about astrology is something I normally wouldn't do. But I see her do readings with people and they're always so spot on. And I intuitively tune into people and find all their stuff all the time. And it's always spot on. Like 100%. And if it's not 100%, it's because the person didn't give Lotus the right birth time or something, right? So,
which you
it,
can
it,
clear blocks to that, by the way.
which we can clear blocks and actually find those information. Um, but yeah, I just want to kind of give you some little edification and confirmation that there's something to this, especially your astrology, which is different than the normal astrology, because normal astrology is about 24 degrees off. And another thing that they've done to create misinformation. And
Right.
so this one, if you actually looked at a star map with your app and looked at where the moon is and the constellation, is actually where it is, not the previous or later constellation.
Right.
Which when you shared that information with me, I just like blew my mind. Like, what? The normal astrology is 24 degrees off, like almost 24
Like a whole sign.
days, like a whole
Yeah.
sign off. Like
Right.
it's total misinformation.
Right.
And when we do know astrology, you can have a huge advantage.
Hmm.
Anyhow,
Yeah.
I just want to kind of,
Yeah. Thank you.
yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's incredibly helpful and so mind-blowing to see so many similarities here on the 4th of July
Right.
to the original birthday of the United States of our country here in the US. And so, okay, most of you have probably never heard of Chiron. It's a fairly unknown planet, but
Yeah.
in the astrology
I never heard
community,
of it before you explained it. Yeah.
it's an asteroid. It's an asteroid, and it relates to the unhealed wound. So, for instance, if someone is a healer or a guide or a teacher, or they're here helping others, and I'm guessing if you're watching Michael's channel, then you are someone who is a healer. You are someone who's an empath. You are someone who heals probably through your
Maybe.
energy
A lot of
alone.
people subscribe who, are interested in increasing their chi energy.
Mm,
I see a lot of that. Or
okay.
mind control, hypnosis.
Mhm.
There's quite a little span there.
So
Yeah.
this can apply to people on the self-improvement
The self-improvement
spectrum
path for
as well,
sure.
who
Yeah.
are working on to be their best self, their best version.
Right.
And the wounded healer relates to as much as you work at it, as much as you strive for it, as much as you're attempting to create that shift, there's some type of wound or challenge that you really struggle to heal. It's like, God, that one thing, that one friggin' thing, you have to work on all the time. That's Chiron, the wounded healer. Okay.
Yeah. And we see this
And
in
so,
people's charts and what they're working through. It's so common. Yeah.
yeah, I have people, Michael, as soon as I bring up Chiron and what sign their Chiron is, they just start crying.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like you can just feel this well of emotion, right? Because we want so much to be the best version of ourselves. And so interesting to see that Chiron is in the same placement
The same
that it
placement.
was.
So would you say that the same challenges that we had beginning in this country are kind of the same or
Yes.
similar now? And
Yes.
which
Yes.
would be what? Because it's in
Yeah.
what sign? I can't tell what that is.
Yeah. So it's in the constellation of Pisces.
Okay.
And for those of you who don't know astrology, Pisces is a water sign. all about emotion, intuition. It's probably the sign of the channeler, like the psychic channeler or the spiritual teacher. One great example of Piscean energy is Jesus, who
Hmm.
spoke about spirituality. He taught about love. He taught about the connection between us and something bigger, right? And so Chiron in Pisces could relate to a very deep wound in the collective, both now and in 1776, around our relationship to God and spirit, which could also be religion, our relationship to religion, right? And with Pluto in Capricorn, which is transformation of the control systems and structures, that could also be the church, right? And the influence of religion on the mass consciousness.
Hmm.
And so having Chiron in Pisces could mean that in the collective, we're being asked to heal a wound around our relationship to religion, our relationship to God, our relationship to spirituality. And then it's just wild to look at the Middle East and what's happening there, right? And just that question of spirituality and religion, and then its relationship to government and the secrets in government and control, and just the way it's all playing out similarly, right? As it was and is now again.
Yeah.
So on a collective level, it really relates to our spiritual connection. And so that's really the cup of tea right now, so to speak, that we're all kind of learning how to drink, is how to heal that connection between us and our higher self so that we can rise above control, we can rise above manipulation, we can rise above domination and become just those pure conduits that we are, right? And that's, I think, the healing. And I think that's the healing that our forefathers were looking for when they created this country, was to create a structure based on truth where they could be free to express their religious and spiritual ideals and ideas.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
Um,
Interesting.
and that's just two of the things that are the same. So I don't want to overload anyone with the astrological information. I'm happy to
Yeah.
share more, but I also know that's a lot to take in.
So it's interesting because during those times, it wasn't like it just happened. It wasn't like just, oh, magically we had a country. It
No.
was people who stepped up and risked their lives
Yes.
to do such a thing.
Yes.
And so I don't know, is it now a good time to do that?
Yeah, and
Right?
for ourselves too. And I actually posted this excerpt of the Declaration of Independence earlier today, as it is the United States birthday. And it's so powerful, Michael. Do you mind if I read it really quick here?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay. So we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator. Okay. So they're bringing in God, they're bringing in source with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right. And so amazing that they're bringing in this idea of higher power into the formation, the
Yeah.
transformation of government, right?
Right.
Which leads me to think that this year, more than it just being a governmental, presidential race, there's actually going to be a huge spiritual component in terms of people's desire to connect to something higher and a need really to heal their connection to a higher power. Whatever that is, whatever religion, whatever spiritual path you're on, whatever you connect to, there's like a healing, there's a calling, there's a activation,
Right.
right? Which is, and it's actually, Michael, this Chiron in Pisces actually conjunct your sun. So that leads me to think it's sun in Pisces, that you as a teacher are very healing for the collective because you bring in a certain level of spiritual connection. I know you do practices to connect your energy, to meditate, to balance your energy.
Right.
And there's a real importance, there's a real need for this, I think,
Well, here we
in the
are today
collective. Right.
doing it.
Doing it.
I think we
Fantastic.
definitely have very relevant solutions, right? And help us get this connection.
And there's just one more thing I do have to share.
What's that?
Tomorrow is the new moon,
Ah,
which is the absolutely most powerful time for manifestation and setting intentions. And so it's super powerful that we're doing this call tonight to get this
hmm.
information out.
Yeah.
And there's an alignment that was happening at the time of the signing of the Declaration of Independence that is happening right now. And that is that the sun, which in astrology represents the soul and it represents the purpose and it represents who we are at a soul level, is exactly conjunct the fixed star Sirius. And this was happening at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, 4th of July.
So
And
let's
it was
just let's
happening
just
today.
so, and we see this in the chart um, on both sides, right?
Hmm.
By the number 2, which is Gemini, I believe, right?
Yes,
And
Gemini.
so, um, Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, aligned with the sun, and so that is probably significant, right?
Yes. So one reason it might be is that Sirius is 2 times as bright as the sun, 2 times as big, and actually 25 times as luminous. So
Okay,
have you ever heard that saying, the dog days of summer?
right.
Well, Sirius is in the star constellation of Canis Major, which is the dog star. And
Ah,
so every year when Sirius lines up with the sun, which is at this time, they call it the dog days of summer
and
because it
and
is
and,
literally
and was
the
it hot for you in the northern hemisphere? Holy cow!
yes,
Today
yes, it is.
we got Callum from Australia, so maybe it wasn't hot for him today,
Right,
but for everyone else, holy cow! I know it wasn't
right,
America.
right. And Callum would probably have a different astrological chart layout because the location is so opposite from where
Right, we'd
we
have to
are.
we have to do a different one for you.
We would,
Yeah.
yeah. But similar signs, the signs stay the same.
Hmm.
Um, but Sirius is an ancient star. It's been worshipped for thousands of years. The ancient Egyptians associated it with their fertility goddess, Isis, and it lined up, it would rise up into the sky at the same time that the rains would come. And when the rains would come, they saw that as the rebirth of their year, that it was the time of prosperity, it was the time of abundance, it was like a rebirth. It was a renewal of life. And so Sirius really represents this energy of a rebirth, right? A new beginning, opportunities, abundance, prosperity, fertility, new life. And so powerful to have that lining up with the sun, even though we have all this truth about the government coming out, right? And we have this
Mm-hmm.
restructuring of the government, and there's a lot of intensity and change and healing. There's also this great possibility of new life and a rebirth of opportunity in the light. And look what came, 1776, this incredible document of the Declaration of Independence that said, we hold it self-evident
You know the thing.
that all are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that all men are created equal. And it's just so
Mm.
beautiful. It just touches me every year. I feel this sense of wow, like to imagine a world that is truly ruled by these ideologies, that is
Right.
truly fair and just for all. Uh, it's truly spectacular. And I feel that with the light of Sirius aligning with the sun tonight and at the new moon, so the moon, which is emotion, the sun, which is soul, and Sirius are going to be all lined up tomorrow at 3:57 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Ah.
And so it's a very powerful time
Maybe
for our
maybe we
country.
should we do a workshop during that time?
I was gonna do it, but if
You're
you
already
want to
doing
join,
it. Okay.
I was gonna do it anyways. But yeah, let's do it together.
Yeah, I don't think I have done an intention setting clearing call. If you haven't been on our workshops yet, we have some pretty powerful tools that clear you of any resistance or blockages of whatever we work on. And the new moon, we know, is a great time to set intentions because there's less resistance, opposed from the full moon, which is pulling on the waters and the energies and the blood flow and, creates the lunacy and so forth. And so this is the low dip of that effect, which allows us to have an easier time setting intentions without all the stuff that you have yet to have resolved being pulled up to the surface.
Right.
So the full moons are great to do all kinds of clearings for your triggers, but the new moon is great to set the intentions.
Right.
So we could do an intention setting thing. And then
I honestly, Michael, this chart that we have right here, what's going to be coming tomorrow with the sun, the moon, Sirius, the sun moon midpoint, all lining up in Gemini, which is the mind and thought and learning and sharing. It feels like one of the most powerful alignments I've seen all year, even more than the solstice, which was incredibly powerful.
Okay. So let's do that. I'm going to put can I put this in the comments?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Good
Not
idea.
from there. I have this comment thing that's on the OBS, but I can't put a comment in.
I for some reason can't even open the video. See, maybe.
So anyhow, go to energyclearingmastery.com, and that's just a sign-up page for our next event. I think it says the money blocks clearing event, but we're going to change that. That's the place to sign up. So go to energyclearingmastery.com and put your email in, and you'll get the email when we send out the notification for that workshop we can consider to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
What time should we do? 3 p.m. to be right in there and grab it?
Yeah, you tell me what's the best time. 3 p.m.
Okay. Well, the official exact new moon is
3:50
at
something.
3:57 p.m.
Yeah.
So we could either start at 3:30 and have about 45 minutes till we hit it, or we could start at 3 and have about an hour before we hit the exact new moon.
Yeah. Which I'm sure anywhere in that time is going to have a very similar effect anyways. We could say 3 o'clock.
Okay.
3 o'clock tomorrow. And I should probably double check my calendar just to make
Yeah.
sure that
I
I'm
love your
not
spontaneity, Michael. This is great.
double booked on something.
Right.
Yeah, I do. I left that open. Very good.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I wonder,
energyclearingmastery.com.
I honestly, if we all come together, I mean, the power of the group is just beyond words powerful, right?
It
So
is. Yeah.
whatever your intentions are, whatever it is you're wanting to create, I can only imagine the power of us all coming together tomorrow at this peak energy moment with the sun and Sirius aligning, the two brightest planets in the sky coming together with the energy of illumination and light.
Yeah.
Just absolutely powerful.
Very cool. Okay, I put the link in the description. I figured it out.
Yay! Yeah, and happy 4th of July to everyone. Thank you for joining us. And it's a magical energy. It's at the parade today and seeing the children laughing and smiling and the people coming together. And I just had this vision of what's possible. What's possible for humanity to be happy and to be free and to be celebrating this beautiful life that's here, and to get out of the fear and the woe and actually start creating this infinite possibility.
Yeah.
It's just so beautiful.
After I zoomed in, I noticed how red I'm getting.
Oh,
I shut off the
Getting-
air conditioner because it's so loud in this microphone. It's like in the background. I was like,
you look like you're
hopefully it
getting a
won't.
nice tan.
Yeah.
All right.
Indoors.
Yeah.
Well, we wish you guys a happy Independence Day for yourself, becoming more independent.
Mhm.
And so tomorrow will be a great exercise to do that, right? What do you want to create? How do you want to become more independent
Right.
and utilize these energies we just brought up, right? Because just as it can be used nationally, it obviously can be used for us personally.
That's right.
And I am going to share with you on that call something that you can do to make it even stronger.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
you're going to learn that there. So yeah, it's going to be cool. So that's going to be it for us today. Thanks for joining us and tuning in and watching. And
That's
again, go to energyclearingmastery.com to sign up, and we'll see you guys on the next video.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Lovely to share this info with you all, and just blessings to you all of abundance, and hope to see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me. Take care. Bye-bye.